"Please subscribe my channel," she said it so casually that at first I thought I misheard her. We were standing in the kitchen, the late afternoon light cutting across the counter, dust floating in the air like nothing in the world was about to change. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't hesitate. She just said she was going clubbing with her ex, and if that made me uncomfortable, then maybe we had bigger problems than a night out. I remember staring at her, waiting for the rest of the sentence, waiting for a smile or a laugh or some sign that this was a bad joke. Nothing came. That was the moment I realized this conversation wasn't about a club. It was about how little my place in her life now mattered. We had been married for 8 years. Not perfect years but real ones. Shared routines, shared stress, shared plans that once felt unbreakable. I wasn't the jealous type and she knew that. I had never once told her what she could or couldn't do, who she could or couldn't see. I believed trust meant giving space without fear. But when she mentioned his name, something shifted. This wasn't some distant figure from her past. This was the man she used to run to when things got hard, the one who knew her before responsibility, before compromise, before me. I asked her why. Not angrily. Not accusingly. Just why. She shrugged and said he was in town, that he invited her, that it sounded fun. She said she missed feeling young, missed dancing without thinking about work or bills or expectations. Then she looked at me and said the words that would echo in my head for weeks. She said she wasn't going to stop living her life just because she was married. If I couldn't handle that, she said, maybe the marriage wasn't as strong as I thought. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't remind her of vows or boundaries or respect. I just listened. Somewhere deep inside, something quiet and heavy settled into place. I realized that if I had to convince my wife not to choose another man over our marriage, then I had already lost something I couldn't get back. Love doesn't need ultimatums to survive. Commitment doesn't need threats to be respected. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house felt different, like it no longer belonged to both of us. I replayed the conversation over and over, analyzing every word, every shrug, every indifferent glance. I wasn't angry at her ex. I wasn't even angry at her yet. I was angry at myself for how easily I had accepted crumbs in place of partnership. For how often I had stayed quiet to keep the peace, mistaking silence for strength. The next morning she acted normal. She made coffee. She checked her phone. She talked about work. It was as if the night before hadn't happened at all. I realized then that in her mind, the decision was already made. She wasn't seeking my blessing. She was informing me of my position. Either accept it, or be the obstacle she'd step over on her way out. I asked her one last time if she understood what she was risking. She sighed, clearly annoyed, and said she was tired of feeling controlled, tired of being questioned. She said she loved me, but love shouldn't feel like a cage. That word stayed with me. As if commitment was a punishment rather than a choice she once fought to make. I didn't try to stop her when the night came. I watched her get dressed, more carefully than she had in months. I noticed the perfume she rarely wore anymore, the one she used to wear when we first met. She didn't ask how she looked. She didn't ask if I was okay. As she walked toward the door, she paused, almost expecting me to say something dramatic, something desperate. I didn't. I just told her to be safe. She nodded and left. The silence that followed was louder than any argument we had ever had. I sat there, not wondering what she was doing but understanding what this meant. This wasn't about jealousy. This was about respect. About choosing your marriage even when temptation is easy. About understanding that freedom doesn't mean disregarding the person who chose to build a life with you. Hours later, when she finally came back, I was still awake. She looked surprised to see me sitting there, calm, unmoving. She started talking, explaining, justifying, saying nothing happened, saying I was overthinking everything. I stopped her. I told her I believed her. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that she had been willing to risk everything we built just to prove she could. And that told me everything I needed to know about where I stood. I told her that marriage isn't ended by one night at a club. It's ended when one person decides their wants matter more than the partnership. When boundaries are treated like obstacles instead of protection. When respect is optional. I told her I wouldn't beg and I wouldn't compete with ghosts from her past. If she wanted a life where my presence was negotiable, then she could have it without me. She cried then. Not because she loved me deeply, but because she hadn't expected consequences. She had mistaken my calm for weakness. She had assumed I would always stay, always adapt, always forgive. She was wrong. Some things don't end with shouting. Some things end quietly, the moment you realize your value no longer needs to be explained. I didn't leave that night. But something did. The version of me willing to accept half love, half commitment, and full disrespect was gone. And no matter what happened next, the marriage she once knew had already ended the moment she chose the club over us.